Good morning. Before I start the talk, any remote developers here? Okay. Anybody interested in being a remote developer? Who's scared of the idea of being a remote developer? Okay. Everybody else. Okay. So this talk will be based on the things that I wished I knew some years ago. Some good, some bad, some ugly, and things like that. It's going to be mostly my personal experience, but I'm going to put in some examples from friends and other colleagues that had some issues, experiences, and so on. So, well, why do people become remote? So, some just want to find the dream job. I'm going to guess that most of you live in Amsterdam or in Netherlands, where it's much easier to find a good suited job than it is in Zagreb, where I'm coming from. But again, if you want to work on something very specific, maybe that company doesn't exist in Netherlands. Maybe you have to move to UK, maybe you have to move to US or somewhere else because that job just doesn't exist. But you might have family and maybe you can't move away. So that might be a reason. Traffic is often a reason. I hear a lot of people from big cities telling me like, oh yeah, I spend 3 hours going to work and back. And if you tell me that I have to travel 1.5 hours to the office, I'm gonna just quit the job, sorry. Or buy an apartment or rent an apartment across from the office. Like I can't live in something like that. Some people want to do some time management. Be with their children in the morning before they go to school. Do some chores in the morning. Maybe their spouse has a different schedule than a 9 to 5, so they have to handle it differently. Maybe they just want some freedom. I want to work in the evening. I want to work in the morning. I'm more of a night person. I want to work 2 hours in the morning, 6 in the evening. Whatever, sometimes remote can give you that. Sometimes, not always. And who wouldn't like to work from a beach? Who would move? Would. Okay? Some people are lying, like 2 hands are not up. I know you're lying. For some people, it's just time for change. They want to try out something new. For some, again, it's just freedom, in sense of I don't have to be in the office at 9, I don't have to do this or that, sometimes. But why companies hire remotes? Most obvious one is money, but I don't think that everybody takes the money as the exact reason, because like, yes, it might be cheaper to hire developers in another country or something, but it's not always about money per se. Like, oh, if we hire developers in Germany, it's going to be 20% cheaper. If we go to Russia, it's going to be 50% cheaper. If we go to some other country, it's going to be 70% cheaper. It's more about the sustainability of the business, because I don't know how many of you noticed, but in the last 5 years, the whole market exploded. Even if you want to find senior developers, you can't, because they already have really good wages. They are not interested in moving companies unless you go with, yeah. Like, oh, I'm not going to move from this company to that company if I can't, I don't know, change my lifestyle, which might mean 50 or 100% more monthly. So, yeah, it's not always that easy. Sometimes they want cultural diversity. So, let's say that you're building a global product here in Amsterdam. Okay, Amsterdam has a lot of foreigners in, so you might find people from different cultures, different genders, different backgrounds and everything else, but do you think that you can represent the whole world in Amsterdam? Probably people in China think of your product differently than people in Brazil or in Canada or in South Africa or in Sweden, Italy, France. So if you want to build a global product, you need people from those backgrounds. Sometimes it's about finding rare talent. I'm far away from some kind of rare talent, but big companies used to open offices in other cities if they had that one person that wouldn't move to wherever, but they built a company around them. And yes, sounds crazy, but remote is nothing new. I mean, big software companies have offices all around the world, right? Those are remote locations. It's just the scale of remote development that we're talking. My name is Miro Svrtan. I'm a senior developer and also a trainer, and I'm coming from Zagreb, this little dot on the south, Europe. So my story started back in 2014. I switched to a startup, and about 2 months later, on one Wednesday, startup accelerator came in and said, well, you're accepted to Berlin for a 3-month course there. And you have to be there on Monday. And on Monday, I was in an airplane. A month later, I couldn't stay there for the whole 3 months because, like, well, yeah, I do have life. And I was back home, like in the middle of the summer, working from home, because the whole team was in Berlin. The 3-month accelerator ended, and they decided to stay in Berlin. Everybody but the 2 of us. So only thing that I could have done was keep home and work at home. And this is how I became a remote developer. So some people might ask, why have I not moved to another job? Because I really love the product that we were building. I really like the people that were building it. I liked the idea. I liked everything. And for years before, I got asked a lot, like, why don't you become a remote developer? And I had some misconceptions about what being a remote developer means, and I'll cover it a bit later. And it was really, really nice for a few months, because I really had my freedom. I would work off my 8 hours a day. If I needed to go to a shop, I can go to a shop. If I want to go for coffee, I can go to for a coffee. I don't have to spend much time around, but it got really, really scary. In the sense of, I would be home alone for weeks. Yes, I would go out, but my social life really got screwed up because I was working from home. I live at home. My commute was from this room to this room, which takes about 5 seconds. So, yeah, you lose a lot of social contact with others. I was really isolated, felt really isolated, frustrated. And then I actually figured out with a few of my friends that remote doesn't mean that you have to work from home. It doesn't have to mean. So me and 3 friends decided to rent an office, and 2.5 years later, we're in an office. We have our own office. It's 5 to 10 minutes by car for each of us, so it's in a pretty nice location, and we even have family coming in. But okay, maybe you're not interested in an office setting. That's really fine. You can try and work from Starbucks or a cafe or something. At least some time, not all the time. If you feel isolated at home, go out, grab a coffee, maybe start the day there, go back home for lunch and then continue work. It all depends. I heard a lot of different combinations of what people like and how they do their work hours. Most of the cities have co-working spaces, which is also a nice place because you can either rent an office or maybe a table, or maybe you can get a dedicated table and have, that's my table, and you can work with a whole bunch of other people where you have the social contact, but you don't have all the company politics as a problem, because you're not going to talk about how he did something or she did something, and you can skip the whole politics and keep nice and learn. But it's really, really important to find work-life balance. So just before we decided to rent the office, as I was really, really feeling isolated and everything, as I mentioned, I decided to take up a table in a friend's co-working space for 2 months. And I decided I'm going to work from 9 to 5. Because before that, my tempo was, so I was working for another company then, by then, was, well, you can work whenever. We don't have any meetings, we just talk on HipChat, we communicate, you get your project, you do it whenever you want, whatever. So I felt completely away from anything, and going to the office, coming back to the car at like 5:05 and saying, I'm done with today, was such a nice feeling. So really, really be aware that if you go remote, work-life balance might be screwed over. If you don't put in your, like, I'm going to work from to. The main reason why I didn't want to go remote was that I thought it meant freelancing. That it meant I'm going to do a project for a week, 3 months or something, then have to find another one. I suck at sales. I don't want to be working 3 months, then 3 months being scared if I'm going to find another job, or trying to handle 5 different clients at the same time so that I don't have the hole in my schedule and the screwed up finances and everything. And all of my remote positions were team-based. Well, team-based, whatever people call a team sometimes. A lot of people think that you're not a part of a team if you're remote. That does happen. That can happen. But it all depends on the company. So if you do good onboarding, it can help a lot. In my last 2 places, I had an onboarding. I came to Finland for 3 weeks. I came to Amsterdam for 2 weeks. I met my whole team. So this is the team that I was working in Amsterdam. And I really liked that Dutch culture with, hey, everybody's going out for lunch and we're all eating together. And I met people there, and that helped a lot with who you are, who does what, and like creating some social connections, because Slack, HipChat, email, Jira, whatever you're using is very, very antisocial. Or we did some brainstorming, but it's really, really important to keep communicating. Like, there's new people coming in. I had one of the jobs where I would just find out that day that, hey, we have a new developer. Or we don't have a developer anymore. Or the head of marketing just left. Or that person left. Or something. And everybody in the company knew that. But I, as a remote, didn't. Because I was missing the cooler talk, water cooler talks, all the gossip. Deadlines moved up because, well, they had a meeting in the office and they said, well, we're not going to launch that on the 1st of July, but we're going to launch it 15 days early, which nobody told me. Or they changed the feature, which is even better, because I'm building it and they come to me and like, why that? We said that. No, but we moved it. We're not doing it that way. Oh, really? Nobody told me. Slack is a really good place. So when I went to Finland, most of the dev team was remote, while the headquarters was in Helsinki. The team manager came in for my onboarding to Helsinki, and there were two developers in Helsinki, and I was sitting here, my manager was sitting here, one of the developers was sitting across, and they were communicating on HipChat. I was like, I want to go to lunch. When are we going to lunch? Did you check HipChat? What? Yeah, we do everything on HipChat. I was like, we're sitting here, here, and here, and we're communicating through HipChat? Like, why? Oh, yeah, we communicate everything through HipChat, even lunches in headquarters, which is a really, really interesting thing because it takes about an hour and a half to decide where we're going for lunch. And it was really interesting, and it took me quite a while to figure out how important that is. So if you have any remote developers and you're talking about going to drinks in Amsterdam or wherever you are, please write it down there. Just so that people know that, hey, we're doing something, and maybe sometimes it would be nice, oh, I'm so sorry that someone is not joining me, not joining us. Who's doing daily stand-ups? 5-minute ones or an hour one? 5 minutes? Hour? Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's an hour. It's really important because as I am not in the office, I miss some of the communication that will always happen as you're talking. And it's really bad that it's not your mistake. It's something that the team has to learn. That, well, there are people that are not sitting right there. We have to communicate it a bit more. Team retrospective. We had team meetings every week that started with retrospective, then planning and everything else. And as you see, I'm on an airplane going to a conference, so I had to join in from there. And it was a really, really nice experience to know and be in the middle of everything. Yeah, we had 3 people remote at that point, at that time. Want to meet other people more closely, pair program with them. 2-hour pair program will do more to connect you to that person than 6 months of Slack. There are some tools that you can use, but anything where you can screen share is good enough, at least to try out. Team retreats are really nice. I know some companies tend to do team buildings or team retreats for like 2 weeks, going to Canary Island, Mallorca, Bali, wherever is nice. Meet the team. I think that actually team retreats would be good even if you don't have remote developers, to do some team building outside of your comfort zone. But for remotes, it's really, really important because that creates the new connections. Because if I came into the company a year ago and I have not been to the headquarters and I have not met others and I have not met other people, probably there are new people in the team that I have never seen. So I do need to meet them. So I have about something like 7 tips. You have to be aware of cultural differences. So how many of you are not Dutch but live in Netherlands? One of the really scary things is how Dutch are objective but direct. They will not insult you, but they will tell you to your face that something's wrong and we have to find a better way. And I really like that principle, but it can be really scary. If you ever worked with Italians or somebody from the Mediterranean, oh, well, we're really loud and have hand gestures of all kinds, which might not fit in with people from Northern Europe, which are usually more quiet and silent and different and less passionate about things, while expressing passions. And I have not worked with everybody in the world, so I don't know how each culture behaves. Cold doesn't have to necessarily mean indifferent. I've worked in teams where there was somebody from the Northern Europe which would come to a feature idea with, yeah, we could do that. And I was like, so we're actually not interested, to figure out a few days later that that was the best idea company ever had. And I'm like, really? Now I work in a team that had a lot of issues because two of my team members are from Croatia and some of the other team members are from Germany. And one of the things that a friend told me was that some years ago they had a lot of issues where the two of them would communicate aggressively, and Germans thought that they were fighting, but we're just loud. We're friends for years. We don't communicate on the same level and pitch and everything else. And it took them about 2 years to figure out that, okay, company is not going down, they're just talking. So, in my region, the 4-letter words are pretty common, like instead of good morning, and that has created some trouble for me. So I did this talk first time in Zagreb, but I decided to leave it here. So if somebody starts with the 4-letter words, try to ping them and try to find out if they're really angry or that's just the way they communicate. It doesn't have to mean they are unprofessional, that they are amateurs or something. It just can be a cultural difference. Nothing more, nothing less. Be polite, tell them, well, you know, we're from this country, we don't like that kind of communication. Can you be more polite, or help them go there? Really, really important thing, time versus results. So all and everybody knows how it's to work in an office. Your manager checks the time logs. So did Miro come in at 9 a.m.? Did Miro leave at 5 p.m.? Yes, so he must have done whatever he was supposed to do, right? Well, as a remote, they usually don't know how long you have been there or something, but they just check what you have produced. Because let's go back here and watch all the turned off screens. So nobody's working here? Yeah, as a remote, that's not gonna fly for long. Or work from home. You have to be motivated at whatever you're trying to do as a remote. And you have to be disciplined. And I think those two are pretty important, because if you're going to do some shitty work, your flat or your house is going to be the cleanest thing ever, because you're just going to do whatever you can to avoid doing the work, at least in my case. Try to track your time, especially if you're not deciding to work from like 9 to 5. To me, what happened was, like, sometimes at 10 p.m. I would look at my time logs and I worked for like 3 hours that day. Because I just didn't notice that I was cleaning the apartment, going to bank, doing this, doing that. And if you asked me, I worked my 8 hours. My time logs were not showing it. So I'm not saying that you have to work 8 hours as time. That's not what your company is interested in, your employers. You should be interested in that, because if you're doing a lot of things, you'll lose track of time. Because with freedom comes responsibility. Try to be async. Sometimes when you're a remote developer and you have Slack and you're in charge of something, at some point 5 people might come and start bothering you at the same time. And you want to help everyone, so you start helping the first person, then the second one comes in, then you help them, then you start helping the third person, and then the fourth person, and then you have no idea and you start sending wrong information to wrong channels and everything else. Try to be async. Hey, today I need something. I'm working on this today. Can you help me out? Because in an office setting, you notice that 4 people are bothering him. In remote, you don't. Because in the office, it's physical that you see that some person is busy. Also, as you're remote, people don't know when you're trying to concentrate because they don't see your headphones on. Try to communicate when you're on and off. This was a really interesting thing. So everybody has a culture of when you come to the office, say, hi, good morning, how are you all? When they're leaving, hey, goodbye, I'm going, see ya. But they come to Slack and like, nope, nothing. Why don't you just come and say, hey, good morning. Hey, I'm leaving. Goodbye. I'm going to wherever, bank, for an hour. Just like you would communicate in the office, just do it on Slack, HipChat, or whatever tool you're using. But remote development is not necessarily for everyone or every company. I don't think that juniors should be put into remote positions. I don't think that seniors that decide to switch languages or something should be put into those positions. Some people disagree with me, but it's really, really important to have trust. And you have to establish that trust as fast as you can. So if you move me as a PHP developer to any other language, it's going to take me 2-3 weeks to try to figure it out, right? Just to get something out. So after a month, how will you know if I worked only 1 hour a day or I was there for 12 hours trying to learn the new language, new framework, new something? So at the crucial point in time, when you're establishing trust, you can't do it. Later, of course. But you can actually try it out. So the company that I was working in Amsterdam, I was the first remote. Then 2 more came in closely after me. And their other developers started being remote. Like it's raining in Amsterdam, I'm staying home, which would mean like every second day from what I figured out, but that's another point. Or one thing that was really hard to figure out for me was like, I'm waiting for a delivery. So I'll be working from home. I was like, really, for a delivery? Then I figured out, yeah, but in Amsterdam, nobody has a car. And if they order something, they order from Coolblue, Amazon, eBay, or whatever. So they have to wait for the delivery to come in for like everything. Which means that you can work from home instead of like taking a day off. Maybe you can try with saying, well, Fridays I'm going to work from home. Can we say something like that? Maybe you can start with just 1 day a month if your company is not ready for it. Maybe instead of taking a day off because your child is ill, you're waiting for that delivery, or you're waiting for some repairman, or it's raining, or it's blizzard, or whatever's happening. Maybe that can be a good thing to try out. Well, maybe instead of relocating. I mean, Amsterdam is really nice. Why would you want to relocate out? So just a small recap. Remote doesn't mean that you have to work from home. I mean, even if you live in Amsterdam and your company is in Amsterdam, you might be able to work in a co-working so that you don't have to travel an hour through the city and back. On some days, go to a cafe and work from there. Remote doesn't mean that you have to freelance. You can be a team member. It's okay. You don't have to be jumping from a job to job. You can be part of a team. Please watch out for the cultural differences. I know that you, as here in Amsterdam and Netherlands, are much more used to it than others, but it still could be hard. And I say it's really not for everyone. Everything. Thank you all. I would really appreciate some feedback on Joined In. If you have some questions, I'm going to start the Q&A, but you can also ask me on either later or on Twitter. Any questions? So the question was if I used pair programming while I was remote. Yes, I did. We used Zoom and Google Hangouts, Zoom, and tried out the Slack product for pair programming, but that one was a bit buggy. And we really didn't need like to take over the other's computer because we would just switch who's doing the screen sharing from one person to another. The second question was, did I try to work in co-working center? Yes, I did. So I didn't like the idea of shared tables because like I have two big screens and I want my setup to be I come with my laptop, tap, I can start working. In a shared environment, I can't. So I did what I did with my friends. For the first 2 months, they have a co-working. I booked the whole table and came with everything there. Any more questions? Would I like to start working in an office again? Well, actually, I am working in an office now. Because, well, my team is all around the world, but the three of us are in the office. It's our office, though, but... Wow, that's a really complicated question. If that office is in New York, yes. If that office is in Amsterdam, probably. If that office is in Moscow, probably not. If that office is in Zagreb, maybe. It all depends on what the company does, where it is, and everything else. Like, if it's in London and then I have to leave 2 hours away by train, no. I don't want to learn French or Spanish on train each morning. Sorry, it was not. Yeah.
So I'm not a remote worker, but there's remote people in our office, for example, in a company. Do you have any tips for the ones that aren't remote?
Communicate everything. Hey, good morning, I'm off, I'm going home, I'm gonna be early, I'm gonna stay late, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Try to think that not everything that you speak in an office, just put it into your tools. Slack, HipChat, whatever you use, IRC or... vacationing is really important. Like, hey, I'm not in tomorrow. Is really nice to say there because you usually do in an office come and say, well, I'm not here tomorrow, right? So you can't something, and remote people might have been expecting you there. So. Did I ever have a manager of remote workers? Yes, with a Finnish company that the manager was handling remote because most of the people were remotes. Well, you should have asked him, not me. And we have not partied in the best ways, so I would not, I couldn't be objective. So, any more questions?
If you work remote, how do you keep a relationship with your wife?
Well, so how do I keep up my relationship with my wife? Well, I'm happily single. Well, happily, not. That's a really good question. So, what I hear very, very often is with people that have family, especially small children, that they need a room for themselves. They need to have a small room, even if it's big as this table is, but to have to close the door and say to everyone else, when I'm in this room, I'm not at home. So like, unless the house is on fire or something, do not bother me. Which is not always nice to communicate, but I don't know if you remember, there was, like last year, there was a CNN interview where a nanny with a child came in, and it was like, oh, I'm on television. So it can be hard. Grumpy Chris Hart just said, well, I redecorated the special room, I think, in the basement of their house, and that's his workplace. So that's where he works. The whole family understand that that's an office. They don't go in there, they don't keep house things down there, nothing. It's an office, it's not a part of the house. That might be a good solution, but because if you pick a room where other things are in, like you pick living room, then people want to watch TV, or if you pick bedroom, they might want to grab some clothes. And I'm working. Clothes. I'm working. Clothes. You had another. The question was if switching languages, as not a suggestion, is from personal experience. No, but I spoke to companies, other companies, and we were trying to figure out how to think of trusting people where in that first part where you can't trust them. Of course, sometimes you can take an educated guess. I know a friend of mine that is remote developer that is switching languages, and he's completely against this idea, but that's a longer story. I don't want to do it publicly, so get me later.
Yeah, I just wanted to share on the remote and your wife issue. Is the root thing. I have very important.
Thank you. So yeah, what I think also is very important is the when you are working and when not. So set a time schedule and agree on that. Then you both know that when it's time for you to work and when it's time for your wife. I think that helps really, really well.
That's a really good tip. Any more questions? Of course.
So, thank you. I moved cities a year ago because my wife got a job, so we relocated because of her, and I am a remote worker for 7 years. Someone back asked about co-working spaces, and I joined a co-working space not to be able to work like I had a desk at home, but to actually meet people in a completely new city. And that was like a really good, I'm friends with those people today. So like, if you move cities and you're remote, maybe try not to stay at home, but try finding a co-working space, because it can help you socialize exactly. Because you're alone because you work at home, and you're alone because you're just like, whoa, new place. So yeah.
Thank you. If you have any more questions, let's talk afterwards. Thank you.